Actually, no, we're not going to do that because it's not going live on Facebook.
Oh,
But it is live on YouTube. You can just share the video later if you want. You're muted again.
sure. Are we live?
We are live. We're live on YouTube, but not on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Well, there you
Yeah.
go. Never mind. Sunday night musings. Greetings, everyone. I guess welcome to our live stream, and it's been I think, a good 6 months since we did the last one. So tonight we are joined by our marvelous Transformers correspondent, Jason. So welcome, Jason. This
Hey.
is something Jason and I whipped up very quickly, I think, in response to the release of the Kingdom Rodimus Prime, which is now available in Big W's across Australia, well, in certain parts of Australia. Would it be wrong to say, Jace, that we now are getting some releases sort of, I guess, gracing our shores earlier than the rest of the world for once?
Sure. This has happened quite a bit, though. I mean, if we want to get into it, so Big W is the place to go if you're looking for a Commander Class Rodimus Prime this week in Australia. Its shelf price is $150 smackaroos things, dollary doos. That makes it quite a lot. We'll talk about value for money. We'll talk about the actual figure because we both have the figure in hand a little bit later on. But in terms of actually getting the figure and why it's out early, Big W actually has a history of getting these figures a little bit early. The Titan class Devastator also hit Australian shelves before the rest of the world, and that was just in time for Big W's toy sale. Last year, Skylinks also hit shelves early before everyone else, and similarly, it was in time for Big W's toy sale. So there's kind of precedent for these things coming out to Australian stores, and coming to our shores a little bit sooner than everyone else.
Okay. Now
The
Rodimus
what
is quickly before. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but Rodimus is classified as a commander class because of now additional trailer, maybe AK battle station. Why the commander class classification?
Well, so the Commander class is something that's been relatively new during the War for Cybertron series that has been our Transformers world for the last 3 years. For Siege, the Commander class figure was Jetfire. For Earthrise, the Commander class figure was Skylinks, and this year it's Rodimus Prime. Now, Commander class is a level of figure that sits above Leader class, which is where the previous pinnacle of Transformers retail figures sat. Leader class's recommended retail price is $90. Commander class is $150. Now it does come down from $150 when Big W does its toy sale and things like that. Does it represent $60 of value over a leader class figure? That's an interesting question. But that's sort of what you would come to expect. The first outing for the Commander class series was Jetfire. Jetfire is massive. Do you have Jetfire on the desk there with you?
Yes, I do have Jetfire, and I'm going to just swap my camera so you can see for size comparisons just quickly. There we go. So
That's not the view that we want.
he's
There we
in the
go.
background at the moment, but it sort of gives you an idea of the size and the scale. So as you can see, I've conveniently placed, sorry, beg your pardon, Hot Rod, Rodimus Prime, new release, obviously Earthrise Optimus, and then Jetfire, or shall I say Siege Jetfire. All, yeah.
Yeah. So you've got Rodimus on camera there, dead center.
Mm-hmm.
You can see he's plainly not as big as Jetfire. He's also possibly just a tad shorter than Optimus Prime, who is of course the the leader that he replaces in Transformers the movie.
Correct.
Now, what's your feelings on the size of the figure? Is the size important to the commander class, or is the commander class designation about more than just size?
Um, I I mean, scale has never really. I mean, I think scale's always been a contentious thing in Transformers, right? I mean, we've discussed this before, and being a big fan of, I guess realism, particularly when I take a lot of photographs. So I couldn't really tell you in terms of because again in the whole universe the scale thing is literally up and down all the time according to a lot of fans. For size wise, I I think they got it pretty spot on. Again, once again, I think Jetfire I think has always been very generous in terms of proportions, but compared to what we have, let's say if you look at Hot Rod now and then Rodimus Prime, I think that transition is quite bang on. I mean, that's just my opinion. I have always thought that as a Prime, particularly even if you look at Optimus, I feel like Optimus should be just slightly larger. Maybe I might be completely wrong just based on the fact that they're leaders or primes. So I don't know. I think it's pretty bang on. I personally, I think
Are you saying perhaps Rodimus is not as much Prime as Optimus?
I'm not necessarily saying that, but I mean, Prime Optimus is the OG, so to speak, and it's big shoes to fill. So you can't have someone as in bigger stature or even more stoic than Optimus, for the lack of a better description.
This is true.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about how we've come to acquire this guy over the last couple of days. So we received word yesterday, although apparently he's actually been on sale since Friday in some stores. We received word yesterday that he's become available and that he's sitting on stores in some Big W stores. Now, if you want to go out and buy Rodimus Prime tomorrow or the day after or the day after that, you're probably best advised to call ahead and ask the store if they have it. And if they can, get them to put one aside for you, because these things are flying off shelves as the Transformers community discovers that they're in stock at particular stores. And it's an interesting problem to have, because we're quite used to seeing Transformers sit on store shelves for a really long time, but a good example was Skylinks. He sat on the shelves for a while. Well, that's true. So Skylinks is last year's Commander class. Now, if you missed out on Jetfire, you are in a world of trouble at the moment, because Jetfire is really hard to find, especially because he's been very popular in the Netflix series, or as a result of his placement in the Netflix series. But Skylinks has not been as difficult to come by. Skylinks, I think, was manufactured in greater numbers than Jetfire was, perhaps. Jetfire has been up for a reissue, but that reissue didn't... Well, the original release of Jetfire didn't come to Australia, so we were screwed anyway for getting it. The reissue of Jetfire was only limited to the USA, so a lot of places that import figures here, they've had to import it from the USA instead of from their usual sources, their usual distributors. And the fact that Skylinks is still around, I think, gives me some hope that Rodimus will still be around for quite a while as well. I also think that the community has had a bit of a controversial reaction to him as the Commander class figure. There's the size issue, but also there's the size issue, but there's also the fact that we already got Optimus plus a trailer at the $90 price point for Earthrise, and to someone sort of sitting on the outside looking in, this is another figure that's actually smaller than Optimus, and it's coming with a trailer. So the question is, why is it not $90? And the answer is that there's a lot more paint applications. Rodimus himself is actually just a heftier and bulkier, and he's a very, very solid figure compared to the Earthrise Optimus Prime, which is very light. There's a lot more paint applications on him, and it's just sort of it's a question that people in the community seem to struggle with getting past. Is like, why am I paying $150 or at least $80 in the US price, and why am I paying so much for this figure? it's hard to show the engineering that is actually intrinsic in toys like this in photos. Like we need to talk about it. Like as you transform the figure, there are parts that do things that you didn't really expect them to do. There's a point where you flip a couple of pieces down and they flip down on a 45-degree angle, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't expect that to happen. That's coming from a world where, especially in G1, like Transformers were very boxy, everything happened on 90-degree angles. Like these days things go all over the place, but it's still unusual to get this point where there's a surface that might be sort of curved around slightly, and there's pieces that fold around on it.
Well, I think there's a possible reason to why. I think there's also that price difference, and again, it's always a contentious thing, right? I mean, in terms of how you justify the cost. But just, when I actually opened it and transformed it today, there was such noticeable differences in terms of just the build quality, and the heft, and also the tolerances. I think one of the things that I really like about where Hasbro is going with this, and it's impressive to say the least, that the tolerances and some of the things and the way they engineer it is actually improving all the time. I mean, if I look at obviously the Studio Series Hot Rod compared to now the Kingdom Rodimus Prime, it's like night and day. But obviously they're different molds and they're different figures in general. But even things like the line art and some of the little, like I said, the little bits and detail as far as clipping bits and pieces. And I mean, I can imagine it would be amazing for these toy designers and engineers to make all these tolerances so precise, and I there's no other way to describe the justification for the price when you actually holding the figure in your hand. So initially I went, wow, that's a lot of money, $150 as opposed to, let's say, $90. But now that I actually have it in hand, and I'll swap to that screen again. And one other thing I was going to say, Jason, was that one reason why, again, could possibly justify the cost is in most packages you find that with toy packages, there's always usually a lot of dead space. But if you look at this package here, I mean, it literally, the size of the box, the trailer fills pretty much the entire space of the box. I haven't actually taken the trailer out yet, or shall I say the truck area. This is where the vehicle mode for Rodimus Prime basically fit into. So they're certainly not creating what, perceived value. So whatever is in the box is in the box. So I think that's probably why also you're getting that $150 price mark.
Yeah, I did see an interesting question from some people sort of querying why the trailer was packed the way that it was. Sort of wondering why he doesn't ship the trailer closed, which I think ultimately it doesn't really matter how he ships in the box. It's more important what happens when you get him out of the box. But I thought it was an interesting question. So why is the trailer shipped open like that? I think the simple thing is that he's expected to fit in the same dimensions of box as Skylinks was last year. Skylinks' box was slightly narrower than Jetfire, and I think the box for Rodimus is about the same size as the box for Skylinks. As far as value for money and things like that, I do think it's worth pointing out that Rodimus has quite a lot of paint applied to his surface, in quite a lot of places that you might not expect it to be as well. So his orange legs. In fact, I'm sorry, I'm just going to put the screen share back in there. So looking at this photo here, this is all the stuff that you get in the box. Now, a lot of the inside of the trailer is sort of unpainted plastic, but you do have these areas on the outside of the trailer that I think are pretty much tampographs, and there's the flame on his chest as well. The yellow wing on the top of the cab, we sort of call it a cab and a trailer from Optimus's parlance, but there's not really a proper term for the car versus the trailer in this case, so we'll just continue to call it the cab. The yellow wing on the top of the cab has that is painted plastic. That's a glossy yellow finish, and there's a different tone of the yellow on top of it there. If this was a cheaper class figure, that would probably just have been molded plastic. The paint on it really actually lets it bring out the detail on the wing as well. You can see a lot of the lines that are in the design. There's also, there's quite a lot of clear blue plastic on offer here as well. There's the canopy to the front of the cab, but also there's the blast effects as well.
Yeah.
And of course, the battle station, the turret that lives in the trailer has sort of it's got some burn effects on the front of the gun there, which it's a look that I'm not sure that I'm especially attuned to like wanting that look on my figures. I don't really like the battle damage that we see in the siege line, but yeah, it's definitely a thing that Hasbro likes to do these days to sort of show a bit of activity and a bit of damage on things.
So I guess that's the question, right? I think it's a preference thing. I think some collectors like the realism where they have the age and the wear and the weatheredness. I mean, you get the battle damage stuff, and the patina. So I guess Transformers has always been synonymous with the clean, very exuberant, vibrant colors and clean kind of look. So again, with the G1 thing, so yeah, I guess some people like more the realism and the patina, and some people like the cleaner look. I feel that they could have done a bit more. I mean, there is a bit like some. I'm aware that there's some collectors that also do their own line work. So it's very interesting that they will weather their own Transformers. But I personally thought they could have done a bit more paint apps on the trailer section, like the battle station trailer section. When you look at the differences between Rodimus Prime and the trailer, it just feels like, like I said, it's basic plastic, molded plastic, and that's it. And I think there's a propensity for a lot of the Transformers these days to be primarily just colored molded plastic. I don't know. I don't know. Do you feel that there's a necessity, or you need to have shade, contrast and shade on Transformers or not?
I feel like it adds to the figure if you do get a bit of contrast in sort of multiple shades of the plastic. But you can also get that detail in other ways. So there's a particular shade of sort of, let's say, lightish pinkish red that's in use on Rodimus in the cab and in the trailer, and I don't think it's necessary to have sort of a second shade of that to provide contrast. But there's also paint applications that do sort of provide a bit of contrast and bring out that detail. I think if there was a different color of red for the front and back of the figure, it would look more mismatched than anything else.
Okay. I actually have a question for you. Now with the actual figure in your hand, there seems to be this ongoing sort of debate as well in regards to, I hear this used frequently said, these things are so good, they're almost like masterpieces these days, and you don't have to collect masterpieces anymore because they've upped the ante as far as these figures are concerned. Now what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's a pretty darn good figure, but does that mean you don't collect masterpieces anymore? Are they slowly getting it to that point?
I think I don't think their intention is to replace masterpiece figures.
Yeah.
This is very, very obviously a retail release figure, right? He's got the joints, he's got the design on like his feet and stuff. They're a bit chunky. They're not quite as streamlined as you would find on masterpieces. These figures are not going for the exact cartoon accurate representation that you would find in the masterpiece line. But what you do find is that they're sort of going for a design that echoes some sort of the best aspects of the character that you remember from the cartoon. So like you can definitely look at this figure and just go, well, he looks pretty cartoon accurate, but like there are parts where he doesn't. Like his feet are a different shape. The pipes are sort of a different length up his arm, and the chest design is a little bit different. But none of that stuff really detracts from sort of it being Rodimus still. The masterpiece line seems to be going more for absolute accuracy to the way that the character appears on screen, and so the increased engineering that comes with that, even beyond what we're sort of getting in Commander class for engineering, it's 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 a thing that's it's in a constant state of flux. Really, there are definitely points where I think there are definitely points where people have said that they can see a particular figure, the CAD design for their head was obviously just taken from the Masterpiece version and just rendered in whatever they manufacture it in these days. And I think it's important to realize that manufacturing has evolved over the last 20 years since the Masterpiece line began. So it's now possible to do things at a scale and at a price more akin to what you find at retail than the things that we were getting in the Masterpiece line, 15 to 20 years ago. And that's why, and that is actually, well, it's close to how long ago it was that we got Masterpiece Rodimus Prime. We've had a couple of Masterpiece hot rods through the years. I think they were about 5 years ago. But yeah, Rodimus Prime, it's been a long time since we saw a Masterpiece of him. So this is a very close figure in terms of articulation, but not really design. He doesn't really look too much like the cartoon. He just has aspects of the cartoon design.
Okay, we got a couple of questions from Rob Franklin. He goes, "Is it the articulation and engineering that warrants the Commander class price point? Optimus with trailer was sold at Leader class price point. So what could have been added to Optimus Prime to have him sold at Commander class? What's your thoughts on that?"
I think the simple thing with Optimus is probably a little bit more detail to the transformation. In fact, having said that, Optimus's transformation is already pretty damn good. There he is. He's sitting around on my desk here somewhere, and I think you've got Earthrise Optimus.
Yeah, I've got him.
Well.
Yeah.
I would add paint. There's a lot of unpainted plastic on Prime, or I'd add more of a glossy paint, which is the kind of thing that we're seeing on some of the highlights of Rodimus. And probably I would add more in terms of accessories. I'd do more with the trailer. The Prime's trailer is small. It's quite funny given that Rodimus in bot mode is a little bit smaller than Prime. The fact that his trailer is huge by comparison to Prime's trailer, and given that Prime is meant to be an articulated lorry with a massive tractor trailer, it's a little bit out of scale. So if we were actually going to redo Optimus Prime at a Commander class price, I almost wouldn't change too much about the figure's engineering because he's pretty damn good already. I would put the hands from Rodimus on Optimus, because even though Optimus can open his hands, it's sort of still a claw. We will get to talking about Rodimus's hands because they're pretty great. I'd add better paint, and I'd add a lot more detail into the trailer, which is ironic because the trailer is kind of where I feel Rodimus falls down a little bit in the value stakes, but. Yeah, we'll get to that. But quickly speaking of the hands, I mean the hands are substantially larger than Optimus's hands, So we're talking about scale issues already. The one thing I did want to you quickly touched on, which was let's stick with the hands, shall we?
Yep, sure.
Because I would like to talk about them because it's worth bringing them up. So Rodimus has pretty amazing hands for a retail Transformers figure. To be clear, this is a line where we are used to seeing a lump of plastic with a hole drilled in it that you can stick a weapon into. This guy has 2 hinges within his hands. He has 3 things. You can sort of see close up in here where I've put a photo up where he's waving. You can see that the index finger can move individually so that he can do the point, and this is the end of the road, Galvatron. But he can also make a fist with his hand, so he can extend his hand out fully in order to wave, and he can also screw it up as a fist. You can't move his thumb, which does make me wonder whether or not there's going to be some stress on the thumb as people sort of push past it to get 5mm weapons in there. And sorry, I've left that question up a little bit too long, but we are still answering the question. Actually, I would definitely give Optimus Rodimus's hands, and thinking so. We've alluded to it several times that Commander class price point is more about parts count and engineering, right? This hand that we're looking at here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 pieces to the hand. I can see 2 pins going through there as well. It's on a mushroom point. It rotates around. There's quite a lot going on in that hand, and so that's where you get the commander class price point out of it, because that's where they've spent more time on the engineering. They've had to get it right. They've obviously have to do more QC on it to make sure that they don't pump them out with the wrong fingers and stuff. I would definitely give Optimus more paint, better fixtures in the trailer. I'd use more color in the trailer, so everything's not just grey or black, and give him better hands, and probably also maybe give some of his joints a little bit more articulation. Like Optimus can't really look down too much. His head will tilt down slightly, but he can't really look down at the humans that you might have in your collection with him.
Yeah, one trick is to pop the head off and just angle him down, particularly if you're taking any photos, if they come off the ball peg. But speaking of colors quickly, Jason, I just wanted to say, I don't know whether you can see through that image, but it might not necessarily translate very well on screen. I noticed that the colors on, let's say, for example, and I know I'm sort of comparing apples and oranges, is if you look at Hot Rod and look at Rodimus Prime, Hot Rod actually has more muted colors for the Studio 86 series. Now, if you look at the new one, the new release Rodimus, the colors are a bit more, like I said, more vibrant. They pop a lot more. However, I noticed that the red segments is not a gloss. And the thing I'm really impressed about, particularly with this figure, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, are there actually die-cast parts in here or not? Because it feels like they're die-cast parts. Okay.
I don't think there are. Nothing is particularly cold to the touch, which you would expect if they were die-cast parts. I think are you thinking about sort of the orange on the legs here, the orange legs and the sort of the joints there? Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they're die-cast. I think they're actually just extremely well painted plastic.
Okay.
And so I think that actually gives you more of an impression of it being perhaps die-cast, because there's a little bit more attention put on it, and we sort of expect some glossy plastic, or some glossy stuff to sort of be metallic, but it's not necessarily actually metal. I'm pretty sure weight-wise, I don't feel anything in there that isn't sort of readily explained by plastic.
Okay, so that brings me to the question of the red portions of the figure. Hot Rod, you can certainly see a bit more of that gloss. I am perplexed as into.
Do you want to put your camera back on the 3-shot? There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 3-shot. I mean, it's hard. You'll see here, perhaps maybe, like I said, it probably doesn't translate particularly well on camera, but you obviously will see the gloss on the red sections of Hot Rod, but not necessarily on Rodimus Prime himself. So when I'm talking about sections here where it does feel like a pseudo die-cast kind of feel or look with the glossy paint, I thought that they could have easily done exactly the same thing for the red portions of the figure itself. So I don't know why they didn't do that. It certainly would have made the figure feel a bit more premium. It's very strange that they kind of left it out. So, I mean, if you really wanted to pick at it, that's one of the things I said that has been noticeably different, let's say, compared to the Hot Rod figure. But again, like I said, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah. So as far as the, I think the plastic on Hot Rod is not necessarily glossy so much as it's shiny, and I think it's shiny because it's smooth. Now, when you sort of blow up a character so that it's larger at a larger price point and things like that, you want to see detail in that. And so I think if Rodimus had smooth arms, things would look a little bit shinier and the like. But I think we probably feel that it was a little bit cheaper as it's blown up into this size.
Yep. Okay. Yep. On that note, in regards to also the color, there is definitely something I feel that we should also probably talk about, and that is the pegs inside. I don't know, it's something whether they can fix. It just seems odd that the ball joints, and particularly the joints in sort of the knees and joins. And in this case, let me see if I can show you this section here and swap to the second camera. What's up with that? You see what I mean? Like particularly in here. Now we're really nitpicking again. Like
you mean the grey and the hinges there?
The grey and the hinges, yeah, exactly.
It's actually kind of the opposite of the complaint that was made with Hot Rod. So Hot Rod, they complained about the yellow in the hinges because it was at the front. In Rodimus, they've actually made sure that it actually is not visible from the front. It's at the back.
Yeah.
Presumably it was not a response to the Studio Series 86 release, but yeah. So I think it's interesting. Ultimately, these things are toys rather than necessarily statues, and so there's going to be some compromise that does require a suspension of disbelief. But that's a bit there.
Okay. One of the other thing I quickly want to talk about is the size comparisons to, let's say, again, obviously Hot Rod is Hot Rod, but how many of you guys actually own the Power of the Primes Leader Class version? I mean, I think there's definitely a noticeable difference again in terms of the vehicle mode, and also the figure when it's completely out of scale when you think about how it was made. What are your thoughts? I certainly feel that the trailer, it's a different line, it's a different figure altogether. Would someone who owns the Power of the Primes version, I think there was a question asked on one of the forums as well, would I have to buy this version now? Like, hey, would someone have to buy it if they own the Power of the Primes version?
Look, I'm not in the business of telling someone that they have to buy anything. There's been a lot of people who've come out and just gone, no, I don't want this because I have the Power of the Primes version. The Power of the Primes version is bigger. He's huge. He's a deluxe that fits into the armor of the trailer. So like, he's a bot that's the size of the trailer plus a bit more. And if that fits your collection, then more power to you. The Power of the Primes figure got a lot of criticism because you can see Hot Rod's legs forming the beams out to the arms for his shoulders for Rodimus, and so it's part of the evolution gimmick that was part of the Power of the Primes release, is that the small bot was Hot Rod, and then when you wanted him to be Rodimus Prime, Hot Rod would form the inner bot for that armor, and so. It's certainly a take on the figure, and it's not one that I am personally wanting to have in my collection, but it is something that's certainly striking whenever you see it on screen. And when you see it and you see this the distinctive curve of Hot Rod's chest and bonnet it's unmistakable, right? When you see this go sort of the curve around on the Power of the Primes version, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a really nice Hot Rod. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, hang on, that's the Power of the Primes version. I don't think I really liked that one when it came out. Oh, hang on, maybe I should have another look at it. Oh, yeah. Ultimately, I think perhaps the Power of the Primes came in for a little bit more criticism than we really should have given it.
Agreed. Okay, cool. Rob's got another question as well. Earthrise Optimus has been repainted to be Nemesis, Dead and Shattered Glass. Do you think this new Rodimus will be repainted in Rodimus Kronos?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't really see a lot of mileage in repainting Commander class figures. It's also actually, while we're talking about that, it is also worth pointing out that that's one of the reasons why they cost more, right? It's a mold that they generally don't really reuse. They only get one use out of it. So, and I say this fully aware that I'm about to contradict myself. But so Skylinks, you can't really repaint Skylinks into someone else. Jetfire,
possibly. Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, I'll contradict myself in a minute for Jetfire. Now, this is actually one thing that Hasbro has picked up from Takara in recent years, which is that they've really embraced the sort of dual nature of things that Takara likes to do black versions of things as sort of the other. It's the evil version of these characters. And so for Optimus, we've been getting Nemesis Primes for quite a while from Takara. So Masterpiece, there's usually a Nemesis Prime. Takara did a black Optimus Prime for animated that Hasbro didn't. There's been Takara has sort of inserted black versions of characters into their own release schedules. And so what we've seen now in the last couple of years is Hasbro's turned around and gone, oh, yeah, we can do that. So Hasbro's released Dead Prime, Alternate Universe Optimus Prime in Earthrise. But so Hasbro's embraced that sort of Nemesis aspect. I mean, like we also saw a black Optimus. Well, we didn't see a black Optimus Prime, but we saw a Nemesis Prime take center stage in Transformers: The Last Knight as well. So that's very much sort of been the arrival of the Nemesis versions of things coming over to the Western world.
Yeah.
So Hasbro's given us alternate universe Optimus Prime in Earthrise. They've given us a Nemesis Prime repaint. They haven't really named him anything. I say that I haven't actually looked at the instructions for him because I didn't know. But the Black Siege Prime in the Netflix series, he's a Nemesis Prime, and so does Hasbro go the straight up Nemesis route and just release like Nemesis Rodimus or something like that, or do they actually name it something else? In fact, I was gonna say, is this what do they give a more imaginative name as Takara did in the Masterpiece line? However, they didn't. They did not. There is the Masterpiece Rodimus Prime, MP9, I believe.
9, correct. Yep. Yeah, MP9. Yep.
He did get repainted as MP9B with the very imaginative Black Rodimus Prime name. Or Rodimus Convoy, sorry. So the question of whether or not we're going to get a repaint of this as Rodimus Unicronus, I don't know. I think Hasbro's sort of backed away from the Unicronus version of or the naming convention of being sort of the evil version of something. But I don't know. It's also kind of a bit of a problem because the way that they did this for Optimus Prime was that they swapped out his main name and left Prime, so it was Nemesis Prime. And this guy is a name swap of Optimus Prime. He's Rodimus Prime. So if you want to make a Nemesis of this version, do you swap the Prime or do you add something onto his name so he's Nemesis Rodimus Prime or Rodimus Nemesis or maybe Rodimus Unicronus? I don't know.
Very good question.
It's a very good question, and I don't think I gave it a good answer.
On the subject of Masterpiece Rodimus Prime, now we're talking about details, and we'll get on to the things that we like about the figure and the things that we possibly maybe dislike about it. The couple of details, I think, at that price point also, I mean, if they have focused on some of the minutiae, which is obviously improving some of the joints in the hands and et cetera, et cetera. The one thing I thought they could have done, which probably might be a big ask, is the pull-down visor. I wonder why they didn't do that. But I guess because of the head so small.
Well, I don't think Rodimus needs one. That was something that we only ever saw Hot Rod use, and I don't think we've ever seen Rodimus actually have a pull-down visor. This is the thing, is that Rodimus is very much the grown-up version of Hot Rod. So we also haven't got the saw blade or anything like that because that was Hot Rod, not Rodimus with those things.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's quickly go, and I know we digressed a bit, but let's get back to Rodimus Prime and this Kingdom release. What are some of the things you think you like now, having it in your hand and being one of the first to you? And I'm still thrilled about the fact that we received this compared to a lot of people in the rest of the world. Having it in your hand now, what are some of the nice things that you like about this figure, or you love about the figure, you think?
Look, I was gonna cut to a shot of me holding up both Studio Series Hot Rod and Rodimus side by side, but that shot is already up on the screen share, so I don't need to cut to that. I actually think it's great that they've really embraced this sort of aspect of Rodimus being a bigger, bulkier, a more grown-up version of Hot Rod. I like the fact that they got Hot Rod out to market first, and then they've gone, right, here's his more evolved, beefed up version in Rodimus as well. I think it's really good. That, I think, comes down to less something about the figure and more about the way in which they've been presented and brought to market. I'm a fan of little details like that. So I like the fact that we've got two figures within 6 months of each other that they clearly show an evolution, and they're both characters from the movie, one from the start and one from the end of it. I think it's pretty great. I think he's got a very satisfyingly complex sense of engineering to him. But like I said, it's complex, but it's also quite satisfying. Things tab in when you move them around and when you put things into place. And so the only thing that I haven't been able to get to tab in properly, I'm just gonna put myself up here. These panels on the back of the legs, they just will not stay there. You can hear me clicking that in. They click in and then they come out. They just will not stay clicked in. But you know what? That's not actually that much of a problem because I don't display the figure from the back, and they do sit there looking okay.
Well, mine actually tab in. So there you go. I don't have any of that clicking issue. So yeah. I'm trying to. Well, there you go.
Look, it's
strange.
It's probably something that I did a bit wrong when I was transforming him. So there's a section inside that where you have to push a wheel up into something and then click it down. I've probably done that wrong. I sort of did it in a bit of a rush, but it's kind of disappointing that I can get it to the point where that is a thing that happens. That's the only part that I find wrong. Everything else tabs in and clicks in properly. I found the transformation on the arms was especially satisfying. The way things flip around, turn around, and ultimately they click in and cover up a gap at the back of the forearm that I didn't think it was gonna cover up.
Okay, just a quick question from Adam. Actually, no, he says reminds me of the red on Earthrise Starscream. Also has a die-cast feel for the Hot Rod. For the Rodimus Prime figure. So I assume, Adam, you're referring to that. Maybe perhaps you got your hands on a figure today. I know people were frantically. I think once you put that post on TCCA, I think everyone, essentially all the groups, everyone was out.
Yeah.
Out on the hunt, basically.
There's been quite a lot of attention on how to acquire this figure from a lot of people over the course of this weekend.
Yeah.
What about things that you dislike about the figure? Let's talk about that.
Oh, okay. I still have things that I like about the figure, but that's all right.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let's talk about things you like about it then.
Well, I definitely love the mold and the head sculpt. So I know there has been some people. They're funny about the head sculpt. They go, I don't know what's this thing with head sculpts. I generally tend to be less critical of head sculpts. I think it's they're cartoons anyway, so I like the head sculpt. The molds are nice. The paint apps for me, especially like I said, the hint of the line art is nice. The vibrant colors compared to the Studio Series Hot Rod, which in my personal opinion, I thought was a bit muted. So if you look at the color in hand, it's slightly more muted, and more importantly, I think this thing, to me personally, feels like a toy. It feels like a toy. The tolerances and the build quality just feels like a good, wholesome toy. The tolerances
and the build quality is definitely important things in sort of making a Transformer feel like you can trust it to sort of do a pose without falling apart.
Or you could play with it. Just being able to play with it, move it around. Mine keeps falling over on the desk, and nothing has fallen out of place. Like it's everything still remains tabbed in, except for those things at the back of the legs. Everything still remains tabbed in where it should be. Just as in terms of build quality, really, really very impressed with it. Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's talk about the things that I suppose you're not particularly fond of. Go ahead, Jason. Tell me. Can't wait to hear.
Let me find a particular photo here.
I actually struggled to try and find anything that I thought could have been an issue with it.
So look, the things that I think are issues are nitpicks, and I think that ultimately speaks to the quality of the figure that's been produced. The fact that you sort of have to sort of drop down to the nitpick to find anything negative. But I do want, there are a couple of nitpicks that I would like to bring up here, right? The first is the trailer is Swiss cheese. It is utterly riddled with 5mm ports into which you can attach weapons, blast effects, things. I don't know why you would need to attach 12 blast effects or weapons into the central portion of the trailer.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I don't get it. My favourite thing about this is that the central portion of the trailer is where you would store the mobile gun turret, right? So surely, it must have a bunch of 5mm or pegs on the bottom of it to plug into that. No, it's got one. It's like you only need one of those ports on there to attach the gun turret to. Like, what is going on? In fact, sorry, you know what? There's two. I just spotted this. I just spotted the second one at the front there. So, yeah, I know. It's optional as well. Like, you can fold that up, and it'll stay out of the way.
It is a very peculiar thing, and you'd think that maybe they could have added more of those pegs to stabilize probably the gun itself in battle station mode. But anyway, yeah, I'm perplexed. I didn't actually notice until you actually brought that up.
Well, so while we're at it, a couple of them are actually like holes right through. So you can see, yes. I held this up to my window, and you can see that there's a couple of spaces where you can see light through it here as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Look, I think that's a thing. While we're at it, what is with the black smoke effects?
Actually, you know what would have been better? A smoky
anything
clear
other than black.
I get you. I don't.
So this is the thing, right? Like, if this is a like a blast effect that was being given with like a Voyager or a Leader class figure, it's like, oh, well, that's fine. That is what it is. Yeah. This is $150 figure, right?
Yes.
That is more expensive than some Masterpiece figures. I think you have the right to expect this to be better.
Okay, yeah, I get it. And it's glossy too, so that means you have to prime it again if you want to paint it yourself.
That's right. And as I have to say, Konami on Twitter has pointed out, if you actually pick up, it's not a blast effect, a smoke effect. Have you got the effect there with you, the effect part?
No, actually, it's probably still in. Yeah, hang on a sec. Let me pull it out.
So if you pull it out and you look in the end, if you look inside the end of it, the part of it that attaches onto the pipes or the smokestacks, whatever, you'll actually see that this was molded in the same blue as the blast effects, and it's been painted.
Let's have a look here. I haven't actually opened this, so I will do this right now. And it comes obviously in a little packet like this with all the blast effects as well as the bits and pieces. I have to say the sword is wonderful. It's quite nice, actually. I love the sword. Speaking of a sword, are you going to keep the sword with Rodimus, or will you pass it on to Grimlock? That's another question by Rob Franklin.
So I'm gonna hold that question in abeyance for a minute until we finish talking about the blast effect.
The blast effect, yeah.
Because I'm also simultaneously working to bring up my photos of the sword that I took today.
Okay. Yep, I have this here, as you can see.
Yeah. Yep. So have a look in the end of it, because you can certainly see that there is some blue visible in the end of it, and the point at which it attaches onto the smokestacks.
Blue?
Yeah, there's definitely dark blue visible inside that.
Let's have a look. I don't think there is a blue. Can you see that?
So inside mine, I can see a distinct blue shade in there, which to me looks like it's a blue thing that's actually been painted black in that color, which also might explain why it's black and not transparent. But then just make it in see-through grey or something. I don't know.
This would be a question you ask for someone that does a lot of repainting and weathering, which is Will Siegel, who is also a member of Toy Reel. I think he said, "What's up, guys?" And g'day, Will. How you going? Thanks for joining us. He's the Diosmith online. But I don't know, Will. Do you think it's something that you could repaint? Beg your pardon. I'm making a mess over here. That was a nice picture. What was that?
Well, I brought up the sword photo earlier than we should.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's Rob's asked that question.
Yeah. So I don't know if we can get that much of an answer on the smoke blast effect. I think we need to put it in Will's hand and see what he thinks he could do with it.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of feel like it being sort of soft and black. I don't know if you can really do that much with it, but we'll find out. So I took a bunch of photos the other day, and I was reminded that I didn't actually take any photos of him holding the sword. And a couple of people on Twitter this morning asked for photos of him holding the weapon.
Yeah.
So I very quickly went and set up in my garden, and took some photos of him. And so we've got Rodimus holding his sword up here. It's worth pointing out also, while we're talking about limitations of the figure, there are particular poses that you would like to do with the arms that you can't do because of the location of the shoulders. So in order to get him to hold the sword right over above his head, I've had to actually, you can't rotate them up and hold them up sort of as you or I would with a sword. The arms have to be straight up.
Right.
And the arms have to be straight up, and then because of the way that they've assembled the elbows on the figure, you can't then twist the elbow around so that it's over the head and then have him sort of hold the sword upwards. So this is the best that I could do to get him to sort of hold the sword over his head, and it's, as you can see, it's sort of on a bit of an angle as well there.
Okay, so not as posable as we'd like. I always say it's not the articulations, the posability, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I also found if I can go to another photo, you can see more clearly in this photo here, because the pipes on his arms extend up beyond the elbow. It limits what you can do with the forearm.
Yes.
So you can't necessarily rotate the arm outwards to sort of have him, point the effect at someone and like blast them that way, unless he's actually facing directly at them.
Yeah. Exactly. The smoke. You're saying the smokestacks can inhibit a bit of the forearm a bit. Yeah. They
can. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of, I'm just looking from that picture there. If you look at the spoiler on the back where it looks, I wonder whether all these companies will start making these gap fillers, but it's not really a big deal looking at it in hand, but you can see these little gaps in the back of him. And, there are various companies now that make gap fillers for everything. This is something I want to say again, based on a retail figure. They've done pretty well to, like you said, fill all the gaps, and it's quite solid. So, bravo.
Yeah, there's not so many obvious gaps on the figure. I think it's interesting. So we call that effect honeycombing, right? So it's an artifact of the fact that plastic is expensive. Plastic is based on oil. There's a finite amount of oil left on the planet. So as oil prices go up, plastic prices go up. So this is something that we've seen happen over the last sort of, I think, 15 years or so in Transformers, is that if you don't need to see the inside of a character's legs, they'll leave it hollow, or they'll fill it in with a couple of struts to sort of give it a bit of support, and that's where you sort of get this honeycomb effect, where it's not a complete solid filled-in structure that we might have seen in toys of old. And so the only place that I really see that happening on Rodimus is, as you say, it's on the wing. And it's kind of a puzzle then as to why they did it on the wing instead of actually just making it one solid piece of plastic. And the only answer I can give for that is that these things are manufactured to within an inch of their life in terms of tolerances and weight. And the weight of that wing was probably the difference between getting an extra blast effect or getting a solid wing. And so I think that's actually, it's an aesthetic that I think people are increasingly becoming used to. This hollow aspect of things. You see it a lot on Seeker wings in Transformers, like less so on the Earth mode Seekers, but definitely on the Cybertron Seekers from Siege. The undersides of their wings there's a lot of honeycombing that goes on there, and they're facing forward in robot mode, so it's a lot more obvious. But yeah, it's not an effect that I see very much on Rodimus except on the wing, and that is again sort of a sign of his Commander class price point.
Very good, very good. We have a comment from Brian Newen. Seeing as though all the Commander classes and Titan classes have made an appearance on the Netflix show, I'm super curious to see how they incorporate Rodimus in the show itself.
I don't even know if they will. I don't even know if they will. The dirty little secret of it is that Earthrise didn't actually use much of the Earthrise molds. In fact, I don't think it used any of them. No, it used Scorponok. I don't know if there'll be. I don't know if Rodimus will even figure into the show or not. Usually, Rodimus comes about after Prime dies. Prime didn't actually die in Earthrise. Hasbro released the alternate universe Optimus Prime and they said, "Oh, it's a spoiler. Prime's gonna die." Ha ha ha! And he didn't. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in the production crew actually, carrying out much of a finish to the Netflix series or giving it a worthy finish. But I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening.
Anything else that you dislike or you would not recommend about the figure at that $150 price point? What other things do you think?
The only other thing that I would say, and I think we alluded to this earlier, but we pulled away before I actually got to the photo. The battle station, the turret, right? There's a couple of things that I like about this. I like the fact that the control sticks and the pegs can fit into Rodimus's hands, and also because the hands are more articulated than we're used to, he can actually like close his fists around them. I think that works really well. What I don't like about it is that the tank tread on it is minuscule. So the bottom of it is actually meant to be a tank tread. It's obviously it's not articulated. It doesn't move or anything like that. I don't think there's even a wheel. I don't think it rolls. Where is it? It's on my desk here somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's no wheel on the bottom of it. No. So like that thing's not rolling anywhere. Like they could have stuck a couple of wheels on the bottom of it for $150. Surely, maybe one less blast effect. Who knows? But the problem that I have more with this mode is that while it looks good in. Oh, I'm sorry, I've been talking to a photo that's not even on screen.
That's okay. That's okay.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. So while this looks good, like you can definitely sort of see he's holding this up. You can sort of imagine it's big gun and stuff. The reality of this is that he's actually almost holding that turret off the ground. This is the only place that you can have this configuration where it is, and the tank tread is just like a half a millimeter off the ground. It's not quite touching, and I like I said, I keep coming back to like bits in the trailer, bits of the mobile turret that I just feel like. Maybe put some wheels on it, make the tank treads a little bit larger, give this thing a little bit more heft so that it actually feels like it's something that characters would leave stationary and point around and turn around and do something with. So
Cool. All right, well that's now for me personally, I think there's some of the things that I could probably do. For me, it's somewhat questionable. Obviously, it would be the contentious price point again, and maybe perhaps the commander class category. Look, at the end of the day, I think you pay for you want to pay what you want to pay. That's one of the things. For me, the debate continued debate is again the paint schemes and things like that. And frankly speaking, other than see for me, I'm not going to actually display the cab, or shall I say the trailer anyway. So as far as the bot's concerned, I was actually hard pressed to find anything else that I actually disliked about the whole set at that price point. So even though it was somewhat expensive, I don't know. I found it really hard pressed. I actually liked everything about it, considering that I actually have it in my hand. So
I think, like I said, everything sounds like a nitpick on the negative side, and maybe it's ultimately just a bit of annoyance at having paid $150 for a figure that ultimately I think is probably worth about $120. Let's sort of bring it home. Let's talk a little bit about value for money, right? Because I've never paid $150 for one of these figures. Jetfire I paid $125 for. Skylinks I paid $120 for. Paying $150 for this figure does actually hurt the wallet a little bit more than I would like to. I could have waited for it to come out at the toy sale, but I did make the choice to go out and get this figure because I wanted to be one of the first people on the planet with it. So that's a that's a bit of vanity for myself, really. And that's why I went out and got it, and then messaged you as I was on the way going, "Do you want one? Do you want one?"
Yeah.
I don't think it's worth $150 when the $150 price point is going to come down very quickly. This guy will be $120 at the Big W toy sale. So unless you're like afraid that all of the stock is going to have gone at $150, like, you may as well wait and buy it at $120. Why pay more for something than you actually need to? I do think that he's worth. He's definitely worthy of the Commander class price point, but I don't think that the Commander class price point is worthy of $150.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. So at the end, I guess in the end, is it something people need to have for their collections? If you wanted to, I suppose what's the term? If you're a completist or completionist?
If you're a completionist, you're gonna go out and buy this figure anyway. You probably already have. I've actually had a few people have maybe not complained, but a few people have lamented the fact that it's coming out so soon at retail because they pre-ordered it for delivery later in the year. Yeah. And I think that's fair. I think its release was a bit of a surprise to us, but there's always a bit of FOMO as well. Like, you're afraid it's going to disappear. Australia has been really hard done by in terms of releases and exclusives for Transformers in the last year or so. We missed a whole bunch of things in Earthrise. It's been hard to get things like the Paradron Medic set, and so you can't really fault people going out and just going, yes, I want this and I'm going to pre-order it. Oh, now I can't get it because I want this figure. I mean, let's not forget, like, toy collectors do derive joy from actually obtaining the new figure and being able to put it on display, photograph it, do whatever we want with it.
Yeah. Speaking of photographs, you did take a very nice collection of photographs when you essentially. So I think we should probably just maybe showcase a couple of those ones. At some point, I think, I'll probably do the obligatory high production photograph at some point. Maybe getting a couple of Alicons trying to battle with Rodimus or something. I don't know, but you took some nice snaps today, so yeah.
Can do. Let me just juggle a couple of things, because what I've actually come to realize here is that the Skylinks photos have not made it into my Google Photos, so they're actually pretty hard to put up. But
let's check those out.
Well, they're not here,
Okay.
so we can go through some of the photos that I took before the Skylinks set. So this is Rodimus holding up the sword. The one thing that you can notice here, the sword, the hilt of the sword actually has a piece that's larger than the 5mm port on it. So a lot of people have said that they think this sword is better suited to Grimlock. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to put it in Grimlock's hand, because Grimlock's hand is one of those ones that we were talking about earlier, where it's just a single molded piece of plastic with a hole to hold the weapon. You're not going to be able to get the sword in there, unfortunately. So yeah, maybe someone will do something about that, but there's nothing you can actually do about that without replacing the hilt of the sword. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but the sword's pretty much going to be Rodimus only. This is the photo that we showed earlier. I've actually got him doing the point gesture in this photo.
Very
as
cool.
well, but he's also pointing directly at the camera, so you can't really see it.
Very cool. I like that.
I'm less experienced at the toy photography thing than yourself. So, yeah.
Hey, not at all.
Yeah.
As long as it works, it works. It's great photos, by the way. So,
Thank
I mean,
you.
that's what
Yeah,
I think, and that's what people want to see. They want to see what it looks like in, I guess, if you basically had your hands on the figure, and I think there was a gallant effort in terms of just getting out there and saying, hey, this is what it looks like and this is what it feels like. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a big Twitter thread that's been bouncing around on Twitter for the last 24 hours or so with my unboxing and things like that. So, yeah.
There is a question from one of our viewers where
Rangatology.
Yeah.
Rangatology says, where the Australian dollar with delivery works out cheaper, I will order from overseas sites. Preference is to buy from a retail store, but locally it is tough to find what I'm chasing. Figure looks great. Thank you. I'm gonna pull a Tony Jones, and I'm gonna take that as a comment. But yes, no, I totally look. I agree, but I agree, but I also do a lot of figure importing, and so I don't know. Do I agree or disagree on this in terms of like preferring to buy locally? In general, I will buy things locally because they will be a little bit cheaper than importing. But there are points where things make more sense to import, like you said. So, for example, the Netflix Wave 3 spoiler box, the leader box, which is a Voyager Megatron repainted with purple Paleotrex and some extra weapons. He's $130 at EB Games and Zing. I can get that for $90 in Singapore, so that gives me $40 of sort of space to negotiate shipping on that one box, and I can get them into the country for about $95 if I order a few of them. So yeah, in that case, I'll definitely get that from overseas. Where there's $5 or $10, and actually probably not $10, but like where there's let's say $5 or $10 in it, I'll probably prefer to buy locally. It's easier. I don't need to mess around with a freight forwarder and things like that. We are becoming quite well served by Amazon this year. There's a lot of figures that have gone up for pre-order on Amazon. There's a lot of figures that are on pre-order on Amazon before they actually have been announced. So the Shattered Glass Starscream that was announced on the weekend, you would have seen that post on Toy Reel announcing that. That has been up for pre-order on Amazon Australia for a couple of weeks already. So all you need to do is go along and look at the pre-order listing on the Hasbro Stores Transformers page. There's a lot of interesting stuff there that doesn't necessarily get announced for a little while. So there's a few things in there, like a Galvatron Unicron set that we don't really know what it is. But yeah, it's up for pre-order, and there's no photos attached to it, of course.
Cool,
So anyway.
cool. Fantastic.
So getting back on some of the pretty photos I took in the garden this afternoon.
Yes.
I'm not particularly good at action photos, so this is as good as I can get. So like Grimlock is not really putting a lot of effort into fighting with Rodimus, but Rodimus is defending himself with the sword here. I probably need to work a little bit more on the sort of like striking poses there. Yeah. And this is just more of a close up showing some of the detail and the lines on the sword.
I have to say it's a very photogenic looking figure. So yeah.
It really is, and I think part of that is the gloss on that. I mean, it's red and yellow, right? Red and yellow looks pretty good put together in most cases. People have always loved Hot Rod, and I think less so Rodimus, but this figure seems much more based on Hot Rod as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's red and yellow, and red, yellow, orange, and flames. So yeah.
Nice. There you go. Close up.
Yeah, there's a bit of a detail there, sort of showing just how the sword fits into the fingers, and you can also see the parts of the fingers that move around the hilt of the sword there as well.
Very cool.
There's also a couple of shots of him holding the rifle. I gotta say, I don't really quite rate the rifle as much as I think perhaps people would like it to. Part of the reason is I think it's got this weird two-hand aspects to it where you can't point it forward.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, based on limited posability, I think based on maybe perhaps the articulation limitations, and also where these two pegs are, I can see why it would be quite limiting in terms of getting something realistic as far as posability is concerned. So no, I agree with you on that. It looks, I mean, it is a bit lackluster to say the least, but very ordinary.
Yeah, I would have been happy if they'd actually given you the ability to take the rifle apart. As you can see, there's a pin goes through there. So to store this, you fold it in half and put it in the trailer. When it's folded in half, it's no use to anyone. If you could split it into two, like you could get two serviceable guns out of it.
Yeah, that's split in half.
Anyway,
folded. Yeah. Cool.
That's
all right.
I'm not sure we have that much more to say about Commander Class Rodimus at this point. We've both owned the figure for, well, I think I've owned it for a little over 24 hours. You're a little over a few hours as you came to pick it up from me earlier today.
Yes.
But I think there's less to say about it at the moment, and maybe we'll wait until you get the figure into the studio and get some more shots happening.
Yeah, so on that note, again, I've just lined up the Jetfire Commander class figure alongside Rodimus and also Optimus Prime Earthrise and the Studio Series Hot Rod. One more comment. I like your photos, Jason, better than my skill level. Do you have suggestions on how one could display a collection aside from your glorious looking room? Thank you very much, mate. That's a very nice thing to say. I think so much easier to say nice things than sometimes the ones that you less desire. There you go,
I think
Jason.
So look, as far as oh man, so I'm going to answer this question by pointing to another podcast, right?
Yes, do it.
So there's a group of Transformers fans in the UK. You might know them on Twitter as Toybox Soapbox, TF Square 1, and 60, 60TF. And these guys have started a podcast called Triple Takeover. They recently published an episode that is all about collection displays and how you would display things, the philosophy of what goes into displaying, and sort of how you go about cleaning things, whether you have glass on things, whether things are displayed behind glass or on glass, and how things get lit. Now, look, I'm going to do a slight little magic trick since we're talking about
displays.
Talking about displays and what's behind me here.
Yes.
I'm gonna put myself up full screen, and I'm going to do a little magic trick, which is to turn on the display lights.
I have to say though, it's very impressive, particularly if you've been there in person. I've certainly been to Jason's place in person and had a look at the display, and it's a very clean display. So I do like it. I agree with Rangatology.
So there's a couple of things happening in the display behind me here. So these are IKEA Billy shelves. I'm going to spend like 2 minutes answering this, and I say 2 minutes, but it'll be another 5 minutes before we finish. I like the presentation that a Billy bookshelf allows me to have. So there's white space. I like negative space, and so as you can see, I've got a lot of figures just lined up with not much behind them. It's a little bit messy over here as I become the TV weather girl. It's a little bit messy over here, and I don't quite know what to do about that yet because I've got a lot of figures that I want to put on display, and I think I might need to add a few shelves. I've also used some IKEA wardrobe lights on here, and I really like the lighting solution because, I'll turn it down because it's a really bright light behind me. I really like this lighting solution because it's not obvious when you look at the shelves that there are lights installed. As you can see, I haven't actually installed lights on most of the shelves, and so this is why I tend not to turn it on too much, because these shelves behind me here haven't got the lights. The lights cost about $45 per shelf, so I've resisted adding them onto the other shelves here. This cabinet here behind me is about to be replaced with a glass cabinet. It's going to be my first glass cabinet, and so I'm glad I haven't put lights into this cabinet here yet. As far as display goes, I like to have figures sort of sitting on a sort of a void space. I'm not sure if you agree with that. If you agree with that, Clinton, or you like to sort of stack figures up and have a lot of stuff happening in a particular space.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a negative space, and also to make figures stand out a bit. So I think there's a propensity for people to overcrowd their displays. The way you've done it, I definitely like it. It's very nice indeed.
There's another sort of display terminology that they mentioned on Triple Takeover called the domino effect, which is, so the reason I like a Billy bookshelf is because it's narrow. Like, there's not too much space to put things in front of or behind things. If you get something like a Kallax shelf where you've got the sort of 30 by 30 by 30 things, you've got 30 centimeters of space that you need to put figures into. Now, our other Transformers correspondent for Toy Reel, Mikey Siciliano, we went to his place the other night. We looked at his display, and he's got this wonderfully restrained display where he's got this massive 5x5 Kallax shelf, and he's put a couple of figures in each of the spots on the shelf, and it's great. I used to have that. I used to have that in a past life, and there were too many figures that I couldn't figure out what to put where in these spaces, because I just found the space was too limiting. And so what you end up with is this thing that they call the domino effect on Triple Takeover, where you put the small figures at the front, and then the larger figures behind them, then the larger figures, and then the larger figures again, until you sort of get to a point where it looks like a series of dominoes that could fall down.
Absolutely.
So, I do thank you for the indulgence, Rangatology. I'm sorry for taking up too much time. I don't know if I actually answered your question very well or not, but that's some of the thinking that goes into my displays here. Yeah.
So on that note, certainly go out, check it out, buy it. I hope this live video and live chat on Rodimus Prime Kingdom Commander class figure has certainly enlightened some of you guys. Hope it's been helpful. We certainly love talking about all our Transformers and all things toys. Any parting words, Jason? I think it's something that people should go out and buy if they are certainly fans.
I'm happy with him. If you don't want to spend $150 on it, maybe wait a couple of weeks. It's not necessary to get a figure when it's first released. You can certainly save yourself some money if you wait and buy it on a sale. You don't have to be the first person on the internet to post it like me. You won't be, because I was, but yeah. Anyway.
Matt, I can't knock you. It's 100 points for enthusiasm and passion for what you love doing. So
absolutely,
it's good. Getting it to the masses first, and it's always nice to get your opinion too. You certainly, and that's why you're our correspondent for Toy Reel as far as Transformers is concerned. So anyway, On that note, I say please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to our channel. We're on Facebook. Also, maybe Jason, give a shout out to TCCA. I think it's a wonderful community as far as Transformers is concerned. I have to say, on a parting note, that within the Transformers community, as far as the group's concerned, I thoroughly enjoy it. So it's always when we can sit down and talk about things like that. But yeah, subscribe, share, and like, and stay tuned for more of these live streams and live shows. And definitely check out TCCA. Jason?
TCCA is Transformers Collectors Club Australia. I am one of the admins of that group, and also one of the management of the club. It is an actual registered club in Australia, so
non-profit.
Join the club. It's a non-profit club. Money that we make from fundraising goes into appearing at Supernova, which is something that we've just done this weekend in Melbourne. We had a couple of people stationed on a nice big display with a massive glass case full of G1 figures and some movie characters, and also some Beast Wars characters, because it is actually the 25th anniversary of Beast Wars this year as well. So please please do come and if you're not already in TCCA, do feel free to come by and join us. You can find us on Facebook. Just look for Transformers Collectors Club Australia. You can find us on Twitter at Transformers CCA. You can find me on Twitter at JM77. And I think that's probably
it. Yeah. So
thank you everyone for watching. And thank you everyone for leaving such lovely and meaningful comments as well. It really means a lot to us, and we love seeing all the nice comments and support. So thank you.
Cool. All right. Signing off.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Adam. See you guys.